Alright guys, so we're here for the mirror match game 1. And this one turned out to be a pretty good game here. We got to be on the play, cut a pretty good hand. Opponent had a mulligan down, and when we first see our opponents, like right now we just decide basic gameplay, play the Shockland, Serum Visions, keep going. Hopefully be able to hold up Spell Pierce and Remand next couple turns. When we see Gitaxian Probe on our side, just so you guys know, this will be me up here on the top. When we see Gitaxian Probe on the opponent's side, we think two options. Delver or Infect. Or maybe even like Killing Fiend deck, but those should be the two things that run through your mind if you ever play through the deck. Just think, Infect, Delver, how do I fight it with this hand? Fortunately, since we draw Gitaxian Probe, we get to see what we're playing against. And after seeing cards like Abbot of Carol Keep, Snapcaster Mage, Kolaghan's Command, and another Probe, I'm thinking either the Mirror or Grixis mid-range. Because a lot of decks don't play Abbot and Delver. They play it in the Blue Jun or Grixis mid-range deck. So I don't think that he's going to have too much counter magic in his deck just because we see Abbot of Carol Keep, which is a bad combo with cards like counter magic. So our opponent goes on, draws a land, and just plays cards. I think he plays Abbot here. Yeah, he decides to, which I find is a good play because it allows him to just get aggressive. But we just snap up the Spell Snare and stay in control for now. Now our plan right here is to hopefully be able to slam Gurmag Angler next turn if we don't have to worry about too much problematic stuff like a Young Pyromancer or something, because we don't have removal for that yet. Now, unfortunately for us, our opponent did draw Delver's Secrets, which for us, we could remand back, but it would just be a cantrip at most that costs him 1 mana, so it would not be a good play. So we just decide, alright, we'll let Delver resolve, hopefully be able to have Gurmag Angler next turn, and just be able to battle it out. Because Gurmag Angler being a 5/5 versus a possible 3/2 flyer, 5/5 will win the game before the 3/2 will. So we just decide to fetch, hopefully follow the game plan of just slamming Gurmag and just racing him. Because a lot of Delvers recently only have about 3 to 4 hard removal spells, so we can be able to get Gurmag back pretty easily. But since we draw a Young Pyromancer, it's better to play Young Pyromancer than it is Gurmag Angler, so that way we have both Remand and Spell Pierce available to us. And since we know that he already has Kolaghan's Command and Gitaxian Probe, we kind of want to bait him to use Kolaghan's Command to grow, or use Kolaghan's Command to shock our Pyromancer, bring back Abbot. But unfortunately here, I believe, it's when he starts to do stuff. Yeah, there it is. He shows off Thought Scour, so now we're actually kind of going to be a little bit behind in the race. Does his draw step. And he was playing smart by not fetching with a polluted delta, so that way he can be able to control the draw step with Insectile Aberration. Decides to probe, sees our hand full of counter magic plus Snapcaster Mage, and then Gurmag Angler. So our plan right now, if our opponent decides not to cast anything, is just slam Gurmag Angler. If he does decide to cast something, we'll Remand or Spell Pierce, and then Gurmag Angler. Angler is just like the overall draw to what we're going to be doing. So we have to take 3, we're on a 4-turn clock. Opponent decides to go for Thought Scour, which I find is fine because, yet again, Spell Pierce and Remand can't counter it. We do see a Fork Bolt and a Polluted Delta off the top, so not really what we wanted to see him draw because we know he has Snapcaster Mage. But we do have Remand now, which actually is really good against the blue decks because of Snapcaster Mage's prevalence. So just being able to hard counter something plus draw a card for 2 mana is incredibly good. Now we draw Serum Visions, which allows us to grow Young Pyromancer a bit. So what we do here is that we have to play Serum Visions first, just in case if he just decides to flash in Snapcaster Mage block Young Pyro. So this way we still get some sort of card advantage out of Young Pyromancer. And now we just decide to slam Gurmag Angler with Remand Spell Pierce backup. Now this is a pretty calculated decision here. There's a decision I have to make here where if our opponent decides to play Snapcaster and Fork Bolt Young Pyromancer into the Elemental token or Young Pyromancer into me, I have to decide whether or not if my opponent has a Terminate or not. And it's just, in my opinion, I find it safer to have Young Pyromancer up than Gurmag Angler, because if Young Pyromancer is able to get more card advantage just by making tokens, he can be able to win the game better than Gurmag Angler can by just being chumped out by tokens on his side. So we decided to try to save Young Pyromancer if he does decide to go for the Snapcaster Fork Bolt, which he does decide to go for. By going for Snapcaster Mage, then Fork Bolt the Young Pyromancer and the Elemental. And we decide to remand away the spell. This way, we have 3 creatures out no matter what if he decides to terminate Gurmag Angler or Young Pyromancer or something. So I find this a pretty safe play. Plus it's a hard counter and draw a card. And we draw Delver Secrets off it, so I'm perfectly fine losing Gurmag Angler at this point. So yeah, our opponent goes for the Fetch Shock obvious play of just getting rid of Gurmag Angler at this point. I felt like it was pretty much the only options that we had at the moment because we couldn't really Spell Pierce and kept going, because that way he could have just said okay. But yeah, we needed that Delver Secrets just to be able to keep going, and that Terminate was a fine draw right now because now we know he's tapped out. Just get rid of the 3/2 flyer. We now control the board. And we decide not to attack during the attack step with Young Pyromancer because he has Snapcaster Mage, and I believe we still know he has Kolaghan's Command from the Gitaxian Probe. So it's just safer to keep Young Pyromancer behind. And if we didn't know, I can't remember if we did or not, it's just better to keep it behind because we know he's playing Grixis. So Kolaghan's Command is obvious a card. So we don't want him to have any sort of snapback shenanigans. We decided to hold up Delver Secrets, waiting for it, just in case if he were to try to remove Young Pyromancer or something with a sweeper of some sort, like Fork Bolt or Electrolyze, or Kolaghan's Command, because we definitely want to keep Spell Pierce and Snapcaster Mage. So having the ability to discard Delver Secrets to a Kolaghan's Command or anything is just nice to be able to protect the other 2 cards. So our opponent does decide to go for Kolaghan's Command, which I believe is Shock and Reanimate. Yeah, he's going to return Abbot with it. So we can't counter it because he has 3 mana up, so we'll just hold up the Spell Pierce. And this is one of the spots where Spell Pierce is either a really good card or a really bad card, where it would be much better to have Dispel over Spell Pierce for games 2 and 3. But I'm still 100% behind at least 1 Spell Pierce in the main deck for game 1, because it's able to counter a bunch of stuff that Dispel won't be able to. We do have the timely Spell Snare draw, which protects us from the Abbot. And he chumps block, or he trades with one of the elementals, so now we have a 3-turn clock with our 3 elementals out. And I believe here we just pass turn, because this way we're able to hold up Snapcaster Mage plus Remand plus Spell Pierce. So we're just like total control right now. Our opponent decides to go for the Abbot, which we just snap off the snare, keep his board clear, because we don't want him to draw extra cards. And all he's stuck with in his hand right now is just counter magic and a land. We draw a land, not the biggest thing we have to worry about. And here, I believe we play Delver, I think. No, we decided not to. I think it's because we wanted to hold up any more discard kind of spells. But we also want to make sure that if he decides to draw a lightning bolt or something, we want to keep our good creatures in our hand so it doesn't kill the good creatures like Delver, which could end a game in 1 turn. He does draw Snapcaster Mage, which is pretty good. Let's see what he has here. Yeah, plenty of targets. Probably Kolaghan's Command is the one he's going to get. But fortunately, I believe, yeah, he just decides to Thought Scour, which we could have remanded that, but it's fine. But I think it's just better to remand. Prevent him from drawing extra cards. And this way, it's a hard counter, and then also it is, what's it called? Just pure card advantage too. And then we decided to let Spell Pierce resolve, which I believe it was a mistake because it does allow him to draw more cards and gets him into a Gurmag Angler. That was, yeah, it was definitely a bad play on our part. We probably could have been able to just close out the game in 2 turns because of that, but now we have to fight through a Gurmag Angler. So that is a bad part on our side. We probably could have been able to win the game a lot faster or be able to win just indefinitely if we were able to counter that. I personally just forgot about the whole pay 2 mana thing, and I had Scalding Tarn and Watergrave. So he does go for the Gurmag Angler, punishing that play. And so we will fast forward a little bit. It's just a little bit of questioning that I forgot to do. So yeah, we'll just fetch in a turn, grab a land, and keep the battle going. So now here we're pretty much on the back foot. While we do have 3 creatures out, now a 4th, we have to be able to fight through as fast as possible to find a Terminate or something, or get Delver flipped as fast as possible to get damage through. If he decides to attack with Gurmag Angler, we will attack with Snapcaster Mage and Delver, just so then we could have stuff to like keep pushing through damage. Now this is actually a pretty interesting attack on his side, because if he does attack with that and we do find a Terminate, we just straight up win. So I feel like he might not have been thinking of that play at all, because if it was me on my side, I would not, well actually, yeah, I could see attacking, because if this flips, then you're screwed no matter what, but if this doesn't flip, you have a chance still, and it's kind of like a 1 mana or 0 mana attack, just destroy a creature. So I'm fine with the attack, but it's just like those are the kind of things you gotta think of with this deck. So we look at the top card, and it is not what we wanted. Another land. So we just decide to attack for the 3, hopefully get our opponent down to 3 points of damage minimum, because he's probably going to block Snapcaster Mage, which he does. So here, Delver next turn has lethal if he flips. So here, I forgot to fetch with Scalding Tarn as well. So that way we could probably drop the Indrona Bolt or something. Now he does draw Lightning Bolt, so the block here is smart. If I were him, I probably would have bolted the Elemental first, because it's obvious that I'm going to be attacking with Gurmag Angler. So getting in 5 points of damage automatically is good. But his other play is to bolt off the Delver and prevent me from being able to get lethal next turn. So it does put me in quite a position, which is tough. So we just fetch, thin out the deck as much as possible. And now we know our Polluted Delta can no longer fetch for targets, so our Polluted Delta is actually kind of dead now. We should fetch for a mountain. We draw Thought Scour, which enables us to get Remand. So we're going to be going down to 2 this turn. So we have to be, if our opponent draws like a bolt or something, we're screwed. By him drawing Murder's Cut, it puts us to 2, and it's going to kill our next play if we do have a creature. But Young Pyromancer comes in, and this is like one of the best plays of the entire game right here. We're able to play Young Pyromancer, and I swore he was going to have like a Spell Snare or something. So Young Pyromancer resolves, pass the turn. Opponent decides to Murder's Cut our Young Pyromancer. In just a sec. Wait for it. There it is. So he decides to try to Murderous Cut the Young Pyromancer. And here what we do is that we Spell Pierce, hold priority, so that way we can be able to respond to our own Spell Pierce, remand our Spell Pierce, get another token, draw a card,